KKHT wants you to meet three of the classiest guys in real estate.
I am Chris Kelso, the maestro of mortgage.
I am Rob Cook, the godfather of real estate.
And I'm Joe Orsack, the king of credit swing. And together, we're
the Real Estate Rat Pack.
Much like us, real estate right now is smoking hot. So whether it's buying, selling, or owning, you need to check out the Real Estate Rat Pack.
They're here to take your calls and answer your questions live. Call now, 1-800-808-5548. And now, the Real Estate Rat Pack!
It just never gets dull for you guys.
Never
No,
does
it
get dull.
doesn't.
You know, we're going to start changing it up all the time,
And now I look forward to two things. Doing that and then the goat scream to follow.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree.
You got the goat scream in there.
Yeah, every week the
Got to
goat
get the
joins
goat
us.
scream going out there.
Yeah.
Well, hey, a couple announcements really fast. Number one, I would like to thank Bill Napick very much, along with Legacy Ford, for our tickets to the rodeo last night.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember
Pitbull
mine in the mail.
Yeah, you have to be a producer.
Yeah.
Oh!
Ow.
Ow!
That's
I'm gonna be
twice
on
today
Bill's-
you've already thrown me under the bus.
No, Rob, you know I love you, buddy.
I'm going to be on Bill's show next week.
Yes, that is true. He told me you will be
Saturday.
there next Saturday
Yeah,
at
you have a
4
subject to talk
p.m.
about?
No.
Okay.
Yep, that
Actually,
is
we
true. At
do.
1 p.m., sorry. So, yeah, no, you'll be there next week. And also want to give
I'm gonna be on with
want to let
Stefan.
everybody know is to all our listeners who are into golf, we have a golf tournament coming up on March the 26th, in which the Real Estate Rat Pack and a lot of our great sponsors here in the studio are a part of, including Capital Title. And invite anybody, if you want to go out there and win some great prizes on some hole-in-one, including a 2015 Ford and or $10,000 in cash, look us up or give us a call. We'll have a couple availabilities of some teams going on out there, but it's going to be a great time, fun for all, and for a great charity, the Sunshine Kids.
Yeah, the Sunshine Kids, great charity. And we have about, 20 teams already signed up?
That is correct.
And we have room for about,
we have a
another
total
10?
of about 10 more. That is correct.
So come on up, give us a call, and, we'll get you signed up.
We definitely will.
What's it, 1:30 a person? And
It's 1:30 shotgun start. Usually get there a little bit early. Go ahead and hit some balls and have some food.
And if you don't play golf, the Sunshine's kids are still accepting fat checks.
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
And you'll be able to meet me at hole 19.
That is true.
There it is.
That is true.
And we got a lot of events going on that week, so we're going to be busy.
Well, we have a great show today, and for all those who are listening, you can call us at 800-808-5548. But it is about protecting your assets in a divorce.
Yes, and a lot of people we have returning guests are now a two-timer, and she's over here in the
We
corner.
have a two-timing
And the
attorney.
rarefied
two-timing
air of the
attorney.
two-timer club.
And Kitty Kutcher is here, and we also have
He's in the kitty corner right now.
with us two of our great sponsors, actually.
Yes.
So go ahead and introduce our sponsors.
Well, we have number one right here, sitting right next to me, Rob. by
Right
the way.
next to you.
Right next to me. We have Rebecca, and her last name is actually pronounced Hass, by the way. And she is with Capital Title of Texas. She's actually in the Sugar Land office. And she brought a great guest, which I'm going to introduce in a minute. But we also, have Tim O'Neill.
Tim
with
O'Neill,
State Farm.
Great our State Farm
Great
agent.
sponsor
And
as
you know
well.
what?
And he's going to be on as well talking about this great subject matter.
I was talking with Tim, and he goes, I've got something to add to about insurance. And we had, before the show, we were talking about things that can occur with your insurance policy going through divorce. And I go, gosh, I never thought that. And I didn't know that could happen. So
Yes.
he's going to impart some great information. So you might want to give Miss Hass here a chance to introduce her guest that she brought on the show.
Say hello to everybody and introduce your guest if you don't mind.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Hass. I'm with Capital Title. I'm in charge of business development, and I have Miss Joni Caskey here with me today with Remax Fine Properties.
Joni, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. Today's subject matter, one of the things that actually Rebecca and I were sitting around talking about this subject matter is, divorce and real estate go hand in hand most of the time. In fact, with the home ownership as high as what it is right now, it's something that ends up going through the process. And whether you be on the buying side or the selling side, it's something very important to look at whenever you are going through a divorce. Now, let us know first, before we go too much further, let us know a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and what you're doing in real estate.
Well, I'm Joni Caskey again. I'm owner of the Caskey Realty Group. I'm actually a licensed real estate broker. Been in the business for over 6 years. I'm a former paralegal. I have a team of 4 agents over at Remax Fine Properties in Sugar Land.
A formal paralegal. So we definitely brought on the right person.
Absolutely. Well, not only that, they know how to be organized.
Yes.
Which might be challenging for a lot of realtors out there. So just say, not all. We love realtors, but they do.
Squirrel!
Yeah, pretty much. What was it? Renee Davy Oakham said, chicken.
Chicken.
But that's a great asset to have going, and I'm sure that in working with your team and things like that, so what prompted you to get into real estate out of being a paralegal?
Well, I'm from a family of brokers, and so I was kind of born into the business. So the fact that I was a paralegal was kind of the odd thing in my family.
So you were just a radical back then, right?
Yeah, I was, and then I decided to join the group and conform.
And the rest is history.
Yes, I love it.
And you're out in the Sugar Land area. So, our subject today is about divorce. And, of course, there's some of us in this room have already been experienced with that event in their life.
Some more than others.
Some more than others. And
It's a humane thing to do,
it is
Rob.
a humane thing to do. Catch and release.
Catch and release
Anyway,
system right
but,
there.
I'm sure you've probably come across couples who have who have a home and then decide they're going to separate and ultimately divorce. How would you step them through that process and what to look out for, and and plus sometimes I know they always want to have you on their side, and don't listen to my husband, don't listen to my wife, just listen, and you have to be very careful about that, how you do that.
It's tough. Sometimes we get the call even before the divorce attorney, which is it's actually nice because it's before things get heated. That we can get involved and actually maybe sit down together before they get in the battle with the attorneys. We do get a lot of calls from one party, and it is challenging because the hard thing for them to understand is we're actually a neutral party. We represent both. One may have the house, one may be paying the bills, but both are the sellers in it, and we represent both parties. And that's tough for them to understand. They want to share their side of it, and they want me on their side. But
You get to play counselor.
I do.
Yes.
I do. And I think I've learned that the best way to handle it is everything has to be group. Everything has to go out to both. We may not meet together, but, we might be on a conference call. So
Yeah, I've done it. Well, I've
tough.
sat them down and counseled them. I said, you got to understand, I can't take sides, and we're going to get through this alive, type of thing. And
At least that's the goal.
yeah,
I can just imagine, how much are we making again? Can you not tell him or her?
yeah. Well, I'm sure
Is it a red flag, Tim?
Or if
somebody
you got to
wants
bring money to closing, it's make sure he or she pays.
Well,
Tim, do you have any
I have had-
obligation to notify the authorities if the one of the spouses wants to increase the life insurance policy or anything? Just curious.
We'll talk about that.
That look on your face.
up in that particular segment. But I know that happens, and we probably have people out there right now who are contemplating divorcing and have a house to sell. And a lot of times they'll instigate the call to you, and then they say, well, don't tell my wife, husband, whichever one you're talking to. And what do you tell them?
They're going to notice when the house is gone.
Yeah.
Sold.
It's tough. I have to take it in at times, and I cannot. There's things that I don't say. Like who I saw them walk in the house with, and things like that. At times.
I didn't even think about that.
Those things do occur
Ow.
through the transaction, and I have to keep my mouth shut at times on that. But I do have to remember I represent both. So when it comes to the real estate transaction, I do. I'm honest, and I talk to both of them openly on it. Now, the personal things that are going on and what I see in the house and all those other things that happen, I do keep my mouth shut.
Oh, is that your son? No. Oh, sorry.
We know what I've advised some people, and oftentimes, if you're representing buyers, you walk into a house and you notice things missing. If I walk into a house and I can see half the closet's empty and the other half has only men's clothes in it or only women's clothes, it's one of the things I say. You might want to just kind of leave some things intact, because what buyers will do is perception. Of course, the buyer's agent will say, "Look, this is obviously a divorce situation because the bed will be missing in one room and the china hutch will be missing in the other room." Is to kind of like make things look like everything's good until we get the house sold. Then you can split it up, type of thing.
Yeah, because as a buyer's agent, I look at it and I say, let's lowball them.
Yeah, yeah,
We need to unload this house.
because they're probably under some duress to get it sold. Because if you go in with the mindset that you're going to be cooperative with the as you're divorcing, you're probably going to get a great price. But if you are at that point where you say, you know what, we have to sell it, and we've got a time frame, and if you're on a quick time frame, you don't get your highest price typically.
I
Well,
agree.
and a lot of times, when you're going through that divorce situation, it can be stressful. I mean, you have, as you mentioned, there's some divorces that are very amicable, but you also have some divorces that are not so amicable. And then you've got the divorce as a result of they found somebody else and they show up at the house, as you mentioned right there.
Yeah.
What's one of your best stories? Do you have a best story you can share?
That's probably it. When I bust them with the boyfriend, and it's like, oh,
Oh, wow.
I know not to say anything about this situation.
Right.
Just how to be all Switzerland on somebody. Just like, yeah, nice to meet you.
Yep. That's pretty funny.
Anyway.
But one of the things, from a real estate perspective, how's the best way? I mean, let's assume it is something that is not amicable, because sometimes, obviously, divorce is not necessarily the things that all parties want to go through. How do you sit down and approach somebody when you're doing that listing agreement, or when you're approaching them to sell that property? How can you make it from that neutral third party? How can you approach it to be able to show them that, hey, guess what? Even though you might not be going through the best of times, this is the best of the situations, and let's try to get through this.
Yeah. Well, at times we interview together in the beginning. I've seen a lot recently where they actually sit down with me separate and talk. But when I open up the communication with all parties, and I let them see that I am here to, group communicate with you instead of pulling one aside and having side conversations, it makes them feel more comfortable. I've been through it, and I've been through a rough divorce, and I think that's probably one of the things that makes a buyer or seller more comfortable going through it with me, because they know. I completely know the process.
This might be your new niche.
I've been through it, yeah.
I specialize in divorcing couples.
I've experienced it all, yes.
It could be a good market. I mean, you get two sales or two purchases. I mean, right?
Two purchases and one
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah.
I can see the advertisement. Got divorced? Call me.
Wow.
Well, it works, and that's typically what has
Oh,
happened.
gosh.
And the one I remember most is Judge Carahan we had on the show.
Right.
Very amicable, and I sat down with both of them, and of course they both bought something afterwards, and I thought,
Right.
I'm liking this. And they were great people both. Sometimes it just isn't a good match.
But and you mentioned you recently went through it. Nothing better than to have walked in those shoes, as they say, to be able to sit down and say, I understand, I relate, I've gone through this. And here's, as much as you want to throw the other under the bus, here's from a real estate perspective what we have to do to get through this.
Yeah, it is different having been put in their shoes.
Yeah.
Right.
So what was your challenge? You had property to sell going through your divorce?
I didn't sell mine, but
Okay.
I think it was the challenge I fought to keep the property, and I was able to. But yes, I did go through the whole process, and I think probably the big thing is I learned on how to communicate and deal with the parties when it gets really heated, and work with everyone, including the attorneys involved.
The thing that's so tough for a lot of people, and this is obviously going to be one of the most emotional things that people go through, is that they're dissolving a business. It really is a business relationship as well, obviously, as a personal relationship. But you have business as a marriage, and owning property is one of the aspects of a business. And it's very difficult to separate emotion from that process and approach it logically and reasonably. But if you don't, there's a lot of things that really can hurt you as a business owner. So anyway, I know we've got. I was about to say we got the finger.
We did get the finger, Joe.
we got the notice that it's we're down to the last minute here before we have to take a break. But I want to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you. God forbid anybody's going through the situation. Knowing that they are able to deal with somebody who's experienced it themselves. How did they reach out to you?
I'm Joni Caskey, the Caskey Realty Group. I'm over at RE/MAX Fine Properties in Sugar Land. My number is 832-580-9091.
That is Joni Caskey with the RE/MAX Fine Properties out in Sugar Land. Give her a call. We have a lot of information still coming. The show is not over. We're just taking
and
one
Joni's
break.
coming back.
And Joni will be right back to talk with us again. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Call the police and the fireman, I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man, I'm too hot. Say my name, you know who I am, I'm too hot. And my band bought that money, break it down. Girls hit you, holla.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we're back.
Oh, I got set.
Time flies when you're having fun.
That's what I hear.
Yes, all the time. You know, we do have a caller, actually, we'll get to right here at the very beginning. We have Joe calling in. He has a comment on divorce and real estate. Joe, how you doing?
Hey, Chris. First of all, wanted to again say good thoughts to you because you lost your pet last night.
Oh, thanks a lot, Joe. This is a good friend of mine, Joe. And Joe and I worked together for a long time. And Joe, you went through a divorce here a couple years ago.
And I'm listening to the show, and it's very. And I guess somebody's gone through this, but one thing I would kind of relay is when you go through a divorce, and everything is different. Every divorce is different, right? But there's so many emotions that go through it. You don't think straight.
Right.
You don't. And how do you guys handle? And we have another mutual friend going through the same thing. And as a real estate agent or people like mortgage, whatever, I mean, how do you guys handle people making like pretty stupid decisions? Because,
You can't fix stupid,
hey,
unfortunately.
don't laugh at me.
Yeah, you can't fix stupid, Joe. I'm just telling you.
I
That.
know. That's Ron White. You can't fix stupid.
But I understand.
It's
I
a
understand what
great
you're saying,
question.
Yeah, it really is.
Because that was kind of what I was hinting at before the break, just as we were parting there, is that there's a business aspect to a marriage that's critical to approach with some sanity, with some semblance of sanity. Because if you don't, it's going to hurt you, not just
You might get Joni to give her perspective on that since
Sure.
he called in response to her comments about that. And so, what do you do when they start making really foolish decisions?
Well, I do agree that they do have to be reminded that it is a business transaction. The other thing is I think it becomes very important to me to earn their trust and to remind them that it's time to just turn it over to me.
Yeah, and we have a goal.
Yeah, to trust in me and let me be the expert and handle this to the end. And encourage them to disconnect from the situation as much as possible till we get an offer and it's ready to, be executed and move it along.
Yeah. So in other words, take, and again, it's you have to be there to really appreciate it. But especially when kids are involved, all you want is everything for the kids, and all of a sudden you turn around, and you're like, oh, I just made about the dumbest decision I've ever made in my life. But that's kind of, so I guess what you guys are saying is, in these cases, just take that type of situation away from yourself and just make it, rely on you guys to make the best decisions, I guess.
Yeah, that's what we're paid for. And I think at that point you let us earn our money and do everything and then call you in when we need you.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's been my experience with it. Unfortunately, in many of the divorces, we do have that same situation.
Yeah, well, that makes total sense. It's kind of a little bit late for me to get that advice.
Joe's like, couldn't you have done this 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Hello. But that's what I'm saying. Like I said, I have a mutual friend with Chris and I going through the same thing right now, and I'm trying to help him. And I actually told him to try to listen to the show if he could this morning, but I will relay the information you guys give me.
Joe, well, thanks a lot for calling in, buddy. It's been too long. We'll get together soon, but appreciate you calling in and asking that good question. And I know you went through it a couple years ago, and you came out on the other side right now. So thanks for being a loyal listener to us, bud.
You take care. Bye.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Well, that's a great segue into our next guest, was Katie Kutcher with Gregory Law. You might want to make a comment. Say hello, first of all.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be back.
And our two-timer.
She's a two-timing attorney on our show. That is correct.
And so I wanted you to kind of answer that
what a
question.
perfect title for the show.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like
The two-timer
a
show.
two-timer.
Going through divorce and calling our attorney a two-timer.
It would have to be one of the rare moments where that's a proud title.
That is true.
But in addressing Joe's question is, you see your client making really foolish decisions, and how do you gain control? Because it's so emotional for them, and of course there's some egos involved, and they sometimes get a little vindictive. How do you pull them back?
A little.
I never experienced that. I was always the nice guy. So
In our situation, if we notice whether it's our client or the other side, and we think that the decisions and they're not listening to our advice, a lot of times we'll go into the court and file a motion with the judge asking to give complete control over to the real estate agent. They determine the price, they determine the
Wow.
sales, they do everything. That way, it's the judge who made the decision, not us. We take our clients completely out of it, and we just let the real estate agent run with it.
and you have difficulties because sometimes the wife or the husband will have chosen that agent, and they go, well, yeah, well that was my that's my husband's agent. I want somebody that can look after me.
Well, a lot of times in situations where if they can't agree, again, we take it to the judge and we say, here's a list of their three, here's a list of our three. Can you pick?
Okay,
And the
Jody,
judge
your new
picks.
strategy is go meet all the family court judges, and
That sounds good. Great idea.
that's a great way to do it.
It's the best way to do it, because in that way we're taking control completely. We're giving it to the courts. We know going into this, when we start talking to the other side, the other counsel, or if they're pro se, we're talking to them. We can tell if there's going to be difficulty involved in it, and we just hit it straight off, let the judge decide.
And of course, pro se means you're not represented.
Right, they're not represented by counsel.
One of the things I'm curious about is that from our business, I see the ugliest, the worst of the situations where we get people coming in because their credit's been damaged, and you look at their credit, and the spouse is paying every note that they have late that they're joint on, and they're doing it intentionally, and the other person's like, well, I can't get them to pay it on time, and all the craziness that goes along with that, and they're like, well, they got the house in the divorce. I don't understand why it's hurting me. Why is it hurting my credit? They got the house in the divorce, and trying to make them understand the lender doesn't care about that at all. They have both signatures on the dotted line. Why would I want to let one of the fish off the hook that committed to pay? And it's they don't get that idea. Do you have a situation where in that counseling, from a financial perspective, you're going, there's no way that one of these individuals is going to be able to get approved for this house by themselves or whatever? And that's, in other words, where the best advice is, look, you guys need to sell this house, but because of emotional reasons, one of them is wanting to hang on.
We do. We see that a lot. The first thing you do when you come into a consultation with us, we have you fill out a financial statement, and we ask you to bring all your tax documents, and we look at the income of both parties.
Wow.
And if we know going into it, somebody's not going to be able to afford this house, and if both your names on it and the credit's not there, they're not going to be able to refinance it, then we advise to push the sale, and sometimes we'll have to take it to litigation to get that sale ordered, because if the spouse is only making $1,200 a month and you're living in a house that costs $3,000 and your child support's not going to cover that, and there's no spousal maintenance if you haven't been married for a certain time, then we know you can't afford it. Don't even, we tell them, look, we have to cut your emotionals out. We have to protect you. And the best way we can protect you is to put this house on the market, or either you need to give it to the other side and let them refinance and buy your equity out.
But the problem I see a lot of times, because what Joe is referring to, I mean, we see it more often than you can possibly imagine. Individuals come in, they do it, and I say, by the way, your home foreclosed on last month. Can you explain this to me? Oh, no, that was my spouse's, and he or she's been paying it for the past, that was 5 years ago. And so a lot of times then when you end up hearing those situations at the end, well, we didn't want to have the kids move. We didn't want to do this. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to keep them in the same school district for the couple of years, whatever it might be. And the problem is that from a real estate perspective, just from a real estate, is I don't care whether you were divorced 10 years ago or 5 days ago. If you have a liability, independent of who's paying that liability, and that liability is bad on your credit, it counts against you, no matter what the divorce decree says. And so a lot of times we see that individuals are getting these divorces but they're not handling their real estate side of things correctly, and it ends up there's no protection mechanism, even though they've said that the other individual has to pay it in the divorce decree.
A judge can't force a person to refinance. They can force them to sell. They can't force them to refinance. We always try to incorporate provisions in there. I tell my clients, look, if your name is on there and they're supposed to refinance, you're still able to contact that mortgage company. You need to check. You need to stay on top of whether those payments are being made, because if they're not, and I've incorporated the provisions to where we can force a sale of the house if they get so far behind, then we take it back to court and we force the sale before you get in a situation to where you're facing foreclosure. We also do what's called a deed of trust to secure assumption. And when we do that, you keep checking, and if they're not paying the mortgage, then we have the right to execute that deed and take that house back.
A deed of trust to secure assumption, okay?
Right, because there's two documents we do. If one party gets the house, we do a special warranty deed giving the interest over. But we also retain the right for our client who's not getting the house, whose name is still on the house, to go back and assume that note and take that house back over.
If and when
in the event of a default,
if they're in a position where they're defaulting, and that's the only way legally that we can protect our clients, short of forcing a sale of the house.
Gotcha.
And it'd be infinitely better. I mean, if I was wanting to get across any point today from this topic, it's not a fun topic. From the credit perspective, I would say the cleanest thing is sell the darn house.
Sell the house.
Sell the house. I don't care all the emotions that are attached and all that sort of thing. Just from a clean standpoint, there's very little good that can happen from retaining it when your name is still on it, yet you've dissolved the business.
But what happens, I think, quite often though, it's the wife will retain the house because the kids are there. They're already disrupting the kid's life, and now they don't want to disrupt it more by making them move and change schools and things like that. So I think that happens a lot of the times. It's not true.
It does happen a lot of times. They don't want to move, but we will sit down with them and show them, look, here's the houses in the area. Here's the houses associated with the school. Mm-hmm. They're a lot less expensive than the house you're living in right now. Do you want to keep this house and not have money to do anything with your children, not have money for the extra things they need for school, or do you want to get out of this house and start looking for a new place that you can afford on your own? I tell everybody all the time, do not count on a child support payment.
Yeah.
Because I can order them, the judge can order them, but if they don't pay it, then we've got to go back to court and get that money. So if you're counting on that money to pay your mortgage, then I need to get you out of that house because it's not going to benefit your
Is that a
kids.
systemic issue going on right now? Is deadbeat dads not paying child support and things?
It's not just deadbeat dads. We have deadbeat moms, too.
Okay.
It's
I
both
like
sides.
a egalitarian approach to things.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
Equal bus runnage overage.
You know, and it is. We see it all the time in our business. We get calls, we're not paying child support, what do I do? And we have to go back to court.
One of the things, I've worked with Kitty for a number of years, and we've referred clients back and forth for a long time, and she has a firm understanding of the credit aspect of the divorce process, and that really is a critical component. People don't think about that, but it is truly a critical component because it will impact your life for 7 years to come if you don't position yourself right beforehand. I know we have to take a break.
Yep.
Kitty's not going anywhere, though, so...
She is not going anywhere. She's right here. How can we reach you just in case, though?
You can call me at the Gregory Law Firm, 713-861-1293.
Just in case you're going through a divorce, that is.
In case you don't want to come back, right? Like, I've had enough.
We are taking a break. We have a lot more to come. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we're back.
I learned so much stuff on the break.
We always do.
And Joe's over here still having his own private show. Right?
That is correct. Yeah, he always
Right
does
as
that.
we speak.
Yes.
It's a subject I'm passionate
Joe thinks the mics are directional, but we can still hear everything he's saying.
That's right. Well, welcome back to the show, Joe.
Hey!
We appreciate that.
Well, you know, as usual, off air, we were having a great conversation, and the lovely realtor here to my left was asking Kitty about the deed of assuming the deed back and how often that happens, and everybody was kind of surprised that it happens way more than you would think.
So anyway,
We'll talk about that.
We're going to talk about that in our last segment because let's don't forget another important thing. Tim O'Neill is here today.
That is true.
In the house.
In the house,
In the
Mr.
house.
Tim
And he is
O'Neill.
Our great State Farm agent, and State Farm is a great company, and I think it's probably world's most recognized insurance company name out there.
That is correct. And we got Tim O'Neill, the most
so he's a
recognizable.
two-timer now.
He's a two-timer as well.
So Tim, the call comes in.
I already made enough remarks about my wife last week. Too.
You got to take out the price on that one.
Back off the 2 times.
He's put the shovel down and he is backing away from the shovel.
That was funny though. That was funny.
So you get the call. Hey Tim, I need to get a price on some renter's insurance, and how much would it cost to increase my wife's life insurance?
Yeah, a little red flag there. Right? We're trained for that. As you know, there's no aspect of modern life that can exist without insurance. We touch everything. And our knowledge base, we have to be an inch deep and a mile wide. You know, we may not be a drill down expert in everything, but we have to know what to listen for, and we have to know how to protect our customers' rights. And the first thing that we sometimes have to educate people about is people will call up and say, hey, we're separated. And we have to tell them that, no, you're not, because in Texas, there is no legal separation.
And we verified that with Kitty before we said that, by the way.
You're she's
contemplating
nodding.
divorce.
For those out there in Radio Land, she is nodding.
Yes.
It's an
So
affirmative assent.
all of the contracts and policies that are in both names or touch both parties are still in full force and effect, even though you're broken up and not living together anymore. So we start there. And we can do things like you can separate the billing. Like if you have 2 cars, they're on the same policy and it still applies to both, but we can break it up so you can pay for your own car.
Yeah. Well, the thing that we talked about actually this week during the midweek, you go, so Rob, I've got some things to talk about on divorce. I go, really, what happens? And you're talking about it doesn't happen with State Farm being a big company, but some of these little companies will take a call from one of the spouses and cancel the other spouse's insurance. So talk a little bit about that.
If you're just processing a transaction without thinking, and one person calls in and say, hey, you know what, take my wife off, cancel the Ford, and then if you just cancel the Ford without realizing that, oh, this guy just called in and had us cancel the policy on his wife's car. They're broken up or they're separated and we didn't know about it. And if you just do it,
can't cancel the Ford, but make sure the Maserati is still covered.
Yeah. Well, when I teach classes, I always go, what could go wrong? That really exposes that other person to possible huge losses.
It does, losses and driving without insurance and tickets and so it's just a question of knowing your customers and protecting their rights and not choosing sides, because oftentimes we'll have known one spouse a lot longer than, we may have had the one guy when he was single and he got married and we don't really know the wife or the other way around. But, you have to respect all parties' rights and listen for things and cannot choose sides and make sure that everyone, we have an obligation to make sure that we protect their rights, and we do.
And that's been a common theme with Joni, with you, obviously with Kitty. Same exact thing is to do the right thing, and at the end of the day, trying to make sure that level heads prevail in the situation.
You have to know what the right thing to do is. That's the thing. People can be in good faith but ignorant.
Right.
And make all kinds of mistakes because they just didn't know any better, and they weren't trying to hurt anybody, but hello, they didn't know any better.
But oftentimes they are trying to hurt somebody. That's
true,
I think
too.
that happens probably more often than not.
Well, then how about unintended consequences also are something that obviously tend to arise as well. Like when Joe called in, everything he did, and I know Joe very well, everything he was doing through his divorce, he was thinking about his children the whole time,
We're
not the
talking about Joe
practical situation.
We're talking about our caller, Joe.
That is correct. That is our
Thank you
caller, Joe.
Maybe we're still happily married.
Yes.
As long as you get that new house, we stay happily
yes,
married.
Exactly. As long as you get that home for him, he'll be set. But that's what ends up happening, though, a lot of times is you end up trying to make a decision that you think is best for maybe one part of the transaction, one part of the party, and you have an unintended consequence that ends up affecting something else associated with that.
All the time. Here's an example. Let's say one spouse gets the right to occupy the house in the divorce, and I've had this. It has the right to occupy it and possess it, but not the right to sell it. And so the other spouse continues to have an insurable interest in that house. And if, you have to keep them on the policy, and if there's a liability loss at that property, they're both technically attached to it, even though one has the right to possess it, or it could be a life estate or whatever the arrangement is. But then when there's a claim payment and we have to write a check, we still have to write the check to both parties, even though really only one, and then they have to decide,
And if they're arguing spouses.
Yeah, and they both have to sign the draft, and it can get a little
Kitty
scary.
is nodding her head again. So we're just affirming everything like that.
Yep. But the biggest thing that came to my mind when we talked about this show concept, and the only thing, a lot of things we're talking about so far have been transactional and just doing the right thing. But the one thing I'm passionate about in this context is, and Kitty touched on it, when you have child support payments or you're anticipating accumulating money for college and doing all the things for these children.
Right.
If the payor dies or becomes disabled, that's a problem, right? So it's possible and very, very simple. And I encourage divorce attorneys, family law attorneys, and everyone in that practice to call me and let's see about getting a little very inexpensive term life insurance policy on the payor of these benefits, if they're paying child support or whatever, that the receiving spouse owns and controls, so that she owns the policy, the bill comes to her and she pays it, and now we're protected if there's a tragedy, and this fellow might have been in good faith and might have intended to make all these
accidentally
payments.
Shot 6 times.
Yeah, but there you go. And so it's very simple to do that. It's very inexpensive, and the attorneys can work
Brutal
it out.
demise over here.
It happens, and it's the right thing to do. And I've done it, many times, and it's what you're supposed to do. And you can even go before that. This gets scary. Sometimes we'll have newly married young couples coming in on the front side before the divorce, right? And, we always talk to them about getting your house in order and building your foundation, which includes life insurance, whatever. So we recommend to them, because it's the good thing to do, is that they own each other's policy. It's called cross-ownership. I own the policy on my wife, and she owns the policy on me. So that if we get divorced in the future, now it's already set up.
And we're not going to hurt each other.
Yeah, because what happens is someone gets remarried, and now the new wife is writing out checks, and she's paying for the life insurance policy where the former spouse is the sole beneficiary. And that might not always be the first bill to get paid when there's a stack of bills to pay. So we can prevent all of that up front with just, knowing your job and doing the right thing, protecting your clients, looking forward.
And and what you just got through saying, and I wanted to go off with this, is I tell everybody all the time is that's a little thing, whether you be going through divorce or not going through divorce or just buying or starting off your life, that term life insurance you're talking about in that life is absolutely vital. I tell everybody it's one of those things you have to have in place because life changes for better, for worse.
I don't think anybody
injuries,
wakes up and says, I'm going to die today. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way. I'm pretty sure that death catches most people by surprise. Right? It does happen where somebody's aware, but most of the time it's a surprise. And that is one of the places where people are probably the most uninsured, unprotected areas of life, and it's something I'm passionate about. I'm like, as a dad, I'm like, if you don't have your wife and children covered, and at least to make sure that the house is taken care of and immediate bills and that type of thing, you're not doing your job as a dad. I mean, I get really passionate about that. It's a big deal to me.
You're right, and to your prior point, the family is a business, and capitalizing a business and ensuring the long-term success and succession plan for a business, all of those things. And that's what we do. We help you capitalize your family on a sound basis so that you're not...
one of the themes of our show always is work with experts.
Yep.
You simply don't know what you don't know. And the best intended person can set themselves up for damage without even knowing it, simply because of lack of knowledge, right? And when you're going through something as emotional as a divorce, even if you are a really knowledgeable and intelligent person, you can inherently just make bad decisions because emotions have taken control. And that's where it's critical to have someone like Kitty to, hey, at this point, just do what the heck she says. Right? Well, don't argue about it. Just do what the heck she says.
That's the other caveat, especially when you get really smart people who think they know everything and they say, well, I don't need... When you hire a professional, listen to them. They you may have been through a circumstance one time. They've been through it 1,000 times. They know what they're talking about. So, always listen to experts. We got 3 of them in the room right now.
Absolutely. So when the expert tells you, look, the best thing, I know you don't want to stir up the kid's life. The best thing is to put the house on the market, sell it, and let's get into something more affordable and everything else. And you can start building your own new memories and all that sort of thing on your own. Do that. That's why you'll reach out to Jody. Get the house on the market, get it sold, and find a new place. That's the best advice, I think, period.
And of course, if you do sell the house, you must close it at
Capital
Title.
You have to close.
Got to close it at Capital Title, and you need
no
to talk to
question
Tim
about
to
that.
make sure the insurance is properly positioned.
But that does bring up a lot of things that can occur that I think people don't think about when they're going through that stressful time. They're not thinking about that stuff.
No.
And I get Kitty with a nod. Go ahead and say, do you talk to them about their insurance policies?
We do. We had an interesting situation that came up in one of our clients' cases where one of the spouses was disabled, and she was a rider on the husband's the husband's life insurance policy. And we had to work with the life insurance company to be able to spin the wife off into her own policy and her not lose her life insurance, because with having a disability, sometimes it's hard for you to get life insurance. And as a rider on the policy, she couldn't stay on his policy, so we had to get her into her own insurance policy. So we run into situations like that all the time. And we do counsel. We try to talk to people about child support, insurance trusts, to do a life insurance policy that benefits a trust set up for your children in the event you die prior to their 18th birthday.
Tim,
amen
we're
to all the above. And the thing is that we can't manage a policy that you haven't bought. So we can bring to bear all of our skills and help you do all these things, but not if you didn't have the foresight 10 years ago to buy the darn thing to begin with, so that we can then do all of these things for you.
A basic term life plan is one of the most affordable pieces of insurance you can get. And at the very least, if for folks who are listening, and this is a shameless plug for Tim over here, but I believe. I mean, I'm truly am passionate about it, and I believe it. I mean, I have insurance out the wazoo in this aspect. If there's
what is a wazoo, by the way?
We'll clarify later.
Okay.
If there was one thing that folks who are listening here, happily married or otherwise, would do, get at least enough insurance if the income earner of the family were to pass away, that it took care of your house and at least some immediate expenses. It is so affordable. It's so affordable. And Tim, on that note, how do people call you to get that taken care of?
281-358-4444. In sports terminology, that's 281 Ruth DiMaggio Berra, Lou Gehrig, Lou Gehrig, Lou Gehrig, Lou Gehrig.
That is incredible. What? That is the infamous Tim O'Neill, one of our great sponsors. But we still have one more segment to go. We have open mic coming up, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Bad to the bone. I broke 1,000 hearts before I met you. I break 1,000.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we're back.
Yeah, we got the Vortex show going on over here in the corner again.
But it's one of those things.
When you start talking about it, Jody's asking, she's like, how long does it take you typically to deal with that situation, and helping someone's credit when they've went through the divorce and that you have that situation going on? It depends on how clean the divorce was.
It was the Zen answer, as long as it does.
And I've got Rebecca over here with Capital Title. She's like, the insurance is extremely important, talking about that. And
absolutely important.
Right?
Yes.
So, so it's one of those things is we have a lot of stuff, this next 15 minutes we have coming up is really open mic. Open mic. So it's really to talk about anything that somebody wants to talk about.
Kenny was talking on the break and stuff about some of the things that have occurred, and I always love the anecdotal stuff about people who made errors, because I like to learn from other people's mistakes. So what, so I can make my own new ones.
Was it Misery Loves Company?
No. I don't want to make those mistakes, and that's why I go to experts, and they can give me those little stories about what happened. So what are the big mistakes when people are going through divorce? They don't do, and you have to kind of reel them back in and convince them, and they still are.
She's like, where do I start?
Yeah. That's a big thing.
She just pulled out a filing cabinet.
A lot of people will rush out, run up their credit cards.
Oh,
because my spouse is going to have to pay for it, so I'm just going to go run them up, or they start taking out new credit cards, and they don't understand that there's a point where a judge is going to say, okay, y'all separated on this date, you took all these credit cards, I'm not going to make your spouse responsible for any of those payments, so you have to do that. And we have to kind of pull them in and say, stop overspending, stop doing these things, and just, be financially prepared for this. We have a lot of clients that come in that they've been married 20-something years, they've never worked, and they don't have anything saved up. And I tell anybody, if you're in that situation, we don't want you to get divorced if you're 20-something married, but if it's going to happen, make sure you start putting money aside for yourself. Check into things, make sure you have financial stability on your own. if your husband's in it for the long haul, he's not going to mind that you create a little account for yourself for a rainy day. Maybe you take a trip with it if you never get divorced, but you need to be prepared for that.
And it's incumbent, even for happily married couples, is that get that financial side of your marriage, because there is a business side of marriage, like we were talking about. I've talked to people who, I asked one woman and said, she's got 3 kids. I said, well, how much life insurance does your husband have? I don't know. They have no clue. And that can work both ways, by the way, because sometimes
absolutely.
the wife takes care of all the bills and the husband has no clue. He just, hands over the paycheck when he gets home. And however it's set up, it's incumbent on an individual to find out what's going on, especially with insurance.
It's with insurance,
and
with
credit cards,
anything. I tell clients all the time, look, you need to know where you're at. Don't just sign a tax return without looking at it. Make sure you look at your tax return. Make sure you know where the life insurance policies are. Make sure you know who the payments go to. Know those things, because God forbid something happens to your spouse, you don't even know where to look for a life insurance policy.
Make sure they know where those Cayman accounts are and
all your accounts.
And
We've got clients that come in that are not even on bank accounts.
Yep.
They have no clue what's in the bank. Well, how do you buy groceries? Well, I get money from my spouse. No, you need to be on the bank account. You need to be able, whether you use it or not, you need to be able to go in and look at it. And it's funny because my husband and I had this conversation the other day. I handle everything. He's an EMT. His job is stressful. So he's out saving lives. So I handle all of our personal stuff. And he asked me a question the other day and he goes, what's in the bank account? I'm like, well, pull it up on your phone. He goes, I don't have access. And we've been married 11 years.
So I want you to
never
take my advice, but I don't actually do it that way.
No, I didn't know. I had no clue that he didn't have the access, because when we set up the accounts, he's on all the accounts. We set up our phones at the same time. We put the apps on, but I had no clue that he'd never went and activated his password, and he didn't have that. And I'm looking at him going, what do you mean you don't have access? No, we got to fix that. So make sure you have access to everything.
And here's one thing I will tell you about bank accounts. This is pretty interesting. A lot of times you'll have a spouse who just wants to have their own account. You know what? If that's the case, make sure it's a payable upon death is set up correct. Because most people don't realize is even you can have your own separate account, but if you don't have a POD, then guess what? It goes to probate. Yes. But if you have a POD, you don't have to wait to probate to get access to that in the event that someone ends up passing away. So there's ways to estate plan correctly
right.
or to live your life correctly and make things like that happen. Joe, did you get him over there?
Yeah. I sneezed the other way.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would like to communicate also, it's, credit is one of those things that people don't ever think about until they need it. And then it's too late.
What's that again?
Credit is one of those things that people don't think about until they need it, and then it's too late. And I'm sure Kitty sees this a lot. People have the concept that a judge can bang the gavel and say, well, he got that credit card and she got the house, and so that means I'm no longer responsible. And it simply doesn't work that way. And I find that attitude tremendously prevalent. And I know that in our situation we're biased because the people are coming to us because the damage has been done. But do you find that beforehand, before people get to that point, you still see that attitude where they're like, okay, well, they're going to get that debt and he's going to get this debt and everything's peachy keen? We
do see that, and we're very clear to tell our clients up front, the judge can order them to pay the debt, but doesn't take your name off of that debt. So you need to be proactive. A lot of times in situations, if there's enough equity and we're going to sell the house and there's not, $200,000, $300,000 in credit card debt, and it's a small amount of debt, we tell them, okay, look, this is the debt, so this amount of that equity is going to pay off all these credit card debts.
That's so smart.
And we try to set up a situation to where each party walks away as easy as possible and without as much debt. So.
And Joni, I have a question for you, by the way.
Okay.
One of the things we've seen, obviously, 6 years ago, the real estate market was different. Today, it's, as we say in our commercial, smoking hot. That is correct. Have you seen more people that are going through divorce willing to now put their home on the market, whereas, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there's like, well, the market's not as hot, it's not selling as fast, we're going to hold off. Have you seen any change in that area?
I think what I see now is that more of them need to. Unfortunately, it seems like more of them that are in a divorce financially cannot buy another home at that point. and they have to sell the home that they have and then go into a rental. It just seems that it's been more based on their finances than the market.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because the other thing that we're seeing also is sometimes people don't want to sell a home in today's market. On the opposite of things, because they say, I can't go buy a new one for the affordable price in which I had, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago when I bought. Any comments about that? Other than the fact that the market's smoking hot, and it is.
They're going to, most of them are pulling back, and then they're going to have to go work on their credit for a while before they're able to come back in after a divorce. I've seen some terrible messes lately. Divorce, it just doesn't seem like it is the same as it was 5 years ago.
Right.
People aren't as level-headed.
That's interesting, because
they're not hiring professionals. Well, that might be hiring professionals, but they're not listening to them.
Right. Well, and what you said about that, about being level-headed, Joni, I mean, I've seen individuals sit in my office and out of spite. As you mentioned, that level, it has nothing to do. And so you have to sit there and say, well, financially speaking, is it really worth you doing this out of spite? Whenever what you can really do is get it over with, move on, start your life anew, and not ruin your credit or that of somebody else's in the process, because then you can't go around and do something, or your kids are going to be affected by it. And we see that a lot of times as that emotion gets in, that spite starts hitting right there out of no sanity associated with it, and it ends up ruining things for a very long period of time for both sides.
We have a simple fix for that. We have clients who start arguing over little things like couches and, I want that set of dishes. So we'll sit back and say, write me a check for $20,000. And they go, what's that $20,000 check for? And I said, that's the cost to take this to trial. Do you really want that couch? Or do you want to buy a new one? And we have to be the voice of reason and walk in and say, look, you're taking this too far. We understand that you're emotional. We understand that you want to stick it to the other side, but you're only hurting yourself by trying to do that. And that's where, as good attorneys, we counsel our clients on that, to not get vindictive. If you want to get vindictive, put shrimp in the curtain rods or something if you're giving them the house. Please don't do that.
I can just see the news. In today's news, there's a run on shrimp.
I have a quote that I wanted to share. Just you made me think of it when you were saying that. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You're the one who gets burned. And that's credit, that's finances, all that stuff in this aspect. When that spouse is being vindictive and they want to hurt the other person, most of the time they're damaging themselves in the process, and no one wins. There's no win.
Kitty
You're both hurt.
Is acknowledging she's nodding her head.
Nodding again.
Nodding her head again. That is correct. And please don't go out and buy a whole bunch of shrimp to put inside the...
Wait, first we had slime in the ice machine, and now we have shrimp on the curtain rod.
On the curtain rod. Hey, that's not a bad idea. Shrimp on the curtain rod. Anyways.
The refrigerator all closed up for the realtor to come in.
Time flies when you're having fun, and we always want to leave this segment with a good quote. Today's no difference. We're going to actually leave the quote today a little bit about something fun and about love. It's called... You've got to dance like there's nobody watching, love like you'll never be hurt, sing like there's nobody listening, and live like it's heaven on earth. Even though we're talking about a divorce show today, remember, a lot of times things can still be changed.
Don't worry,
they can
be
still
happy.
Be unwind. Don't worry, be happy. Time flies when you're having fun. Thanks, Joni. Thank Kitty. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Rebecca. Everyone out there. Until next time, we are out.
And you've been listening to the Real Estate Rat Pack. The question is, who's Frank, who's Sammy, who's Dean, and who's the other guy?
Chris is Frank,
I'm
he's
Dean.
and I'm Sammy.
Yes. That's right. Yeah.
So tune in to the really big show every Saturday at 9 a.m. right here on 100.7 The Word, KKHT.